So we're about to pass out this award, but right now I want you to join me in honoring my friend and colleague, Jim. Let's thank Roland Smith. And I wonder if you could get here, and thank you very much. Would you be able to present the award to Roland?
Well, as I just mentioned, it's wonderful to be associated with CNC and the people who have worked very hard to make that a going enterprise here. And I guess every award has to have a name, and I'm happy to share mine with this one, and I look forward to the day when it's right there alongside Man Booker and Buick. And the way it gets there is by the quality of the people who get the award. And we're starting off on a very good place.
Well, thank you so much. First of all, thank you so much for this. This is a tremendous honor for me, and I really appreciate it. Just so you know, when I get awards, they hang in my little office, and when I get discouraged, which is every day when I'm writing, I look at them and go, I know I can do this, because look at, I won the Leo Fallon Award, which is really good. To elaborate a little bit on my background, I did work at the Portland Zoo for 10 years, and when I left the Portland Zoo, I was the senior feline keeper. I was in charge of all the lions and leopards and tigers, oh my, I took care of the big cats. And then I went off and I became a research biologist. I was a research biologist for 12 years. So before I became an author, I spent over 20 years working with animals, and that's a good thing because it gave me something important to write about. I want to talk to you. Are any of you interested in writing, you young guys? Raise your hand. Are any of you interested in traveling around the world and having somebody else pay for it? Because that's what I get to do for a living. Here's how it works. I've written over 25 books, and when I get an idea for a story, just the idea, I give it to a publisher. They give me a big bucket full of money, and I actually use their money to travel around and do the research for my books. And I think anybody can become an author. There's nothing special about me. I'm not smarter than you. You're all smarter than me. The reason I'm here is because I've written all these books, and the reason I got to write these books is because I can read. I read 2 or 3 books every week. I've done that for over, well, 40 years now. And because I have stuff in my head from reading books, that's what's turned me into an author and some other things. When I was a research biologist, what I did mostly for 12 years is I was in charge of a thing called the Red Wolf Reintroduction Program. I had a really cool job title. Do any of you guys have job titles? No? Not yet. You're going to get them. Here's my best job title. I used to be called the Red Wolf Species Coordinator Stud Bookkeeper for the United States. And so I made my living letting wolves go back into the wild. And when I write a book, we're going to get to your questions soon. I'm giving you guys a chance to warm up and think of your questions. When I write a book, I write about what's important to me. And when you write your books and stories, you need to write about what's important to you. Examples. If you're happy about something in your life, something you really like, you should write about it because that's important to you. If you're unhappy about something, ticked off about something, you should write about that too because that's also important to you. So if you want to know what to write about what's most important to you. Here's something that's really important. You are all old enough to understand this. Inspiration doesn't cause writing. Writing causes inspiration. So if you want to be a writer, you just sit down and start writing. And it doesn't matter if you have the flu. You just start writing, and that's where inspiration comes from. Even if your head is empty that day, trust me, when you start putting words down on paper, however you do it with a computer or a piece of paper, however you do it, that's where inspiration comes from. You just start working on the story. When I'm reading books, doing research, I kind of just read the books like you would read a book. Well, I read it maybe a little bit differently. I'm looking for really little bits of information. Does that make sense? So, let's say I'm reading a book about climbing Mount Everest and they start talking about oxygen mass. Well, I might slow my reading down and learn a lot about how an oxygen mass fits and what the problems are with the oxygen. And as I'm reading, I'll take notes about that, okay? Because I might think, you know what, I'm going to use that little element in my book. Does that make sense? So I read like you do for fun. But when I see something that's interesting to me, remember I write about what's interesting to me, I stop and go, oh, that's interesting. I might use that in my book. And then I kind of slow the reading down a little bit, take notes, and maybe insert that little thing in my book someplace.
Like when you write books, how long does it usually take?
Good question. It depends on the book. I mean, it depends. I mean, the fastest book I've ever written novel was a book called Sasquatch. It took me 3 weeks. It was beautiful. I wrote the whole thing on the road. I was on the road. I wasn't home. I wrote the whole thing on the road. and it came out, and it's still doing really well. And after that, not very brightly, I thought, this is so cool, I can write a book every 3 weeks. It's never happened again. Alpha Run took me 12 years. So, anywhere between 3 weeks and 12 years. I usually have 1 or 2 books come out a year.